Wherever you're listening in the world, it's a pleasure to welcome you to IsraelCast, the podcast powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. I'm Stephen Shalowitz, coming to you from Israel's Supreme Court in Jerusalem, where our featured guest is Judge Elyakim Rubinstein. But before we bring on the judge, I'd like to remind you that for over 120 years, Jewish National Fund USA has been the premier philanthropic movement for the land and people of Israel. While best known for planting trees in Israel, JNF USA contributes to Israeli life in so many ways, including community development in the Negev and the Galilee, preservation of heritage sites, supporting people with disabilities, and connecting high school and college students to Israel. To learn more and to see how you can contribute, do visit jnf.org. Once again, jnf.org. All right, once again, our featured guest on this episode is Judge Elyakim Rubinstein. He is a former vice president of the Israeli Supreme Court. Prior to that, he served for 7 years as Attorney General of Israel. His multifaceted career, including serving as a civil servant and diplomat, where he helped shape the country's peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan, makes him a leading voice in the country today. He brings his background to his new role as president of the Society for Preservation of Israel Heritage Sites after taking over the role from the late, great Shlomo Hillel. With that, we warmly welcome you, Judge Rubinstein, to IsraelCast. We want to thank you so much for inviting us into your offices today.
Thank you very much. You're most welcome. This is a GNF framework, so I'd like to mention that as a kid in Givatayim, 70 years ago, I can say, we used to contribute a coin to JNF every Friday, and I was in my class. I was in charge. I was the one who went with this. Where do I have it? I have it somewhere.
The blue box, you mean, Judge?
Blue box, sure. I have it. I have it at home. I have it here.
Well, I'll tell you what, Judge, let's try and find it later on, and maybe we'll take a photo with it if we get to it. Well, I do want to talk about your new role. Once again, congratulations as president of the Society for Preservation of Israel Heritage Sites and some of your previous work as well. But really what I'd like to do is start out our conversation talking about October 7th and its aftermath. And I want to do that because you know Israel's neighbors and the region as well, if not better, than anybody in this country. So I'd love your perspective, Judge. How do you think the war unfolds? What do you think the day after looks like? What needs to happen to make that all happen?
Well, first of all, this event, October 7, has been an unbelievable nightmare, a surprise that nobody anticipated. And the failure, the intelligence failure, the operative failure, the loss of so many lives, and the kidnapped people whose agony is unbelievable. It's something which we all feel in our guts that it's a wrong thing. But so that's the beginning, and the war that came thereafter was the most just war you can think of, because I'd like to challenge any country. What would they do, including the U.S.? What would they do if an attack in their own territory would occur, surprisingly killing people in their beds, kidnapping them, raping, maiming, robbing, just name it. We lost a relative in Kibbutz Be'eri, my family, my wife's relative. She was 88. She was there for 70 years, since the army, Nachal, or even before that. And she was killed. And her husband, who was 90, was wounded. The war was a must. unfortunately. And I want to underline that I know the Israeli Defense Forces instructions and the ideology that we don't want the Palestinian population to be killed or affected. It happens because Hamas and for years and years, also myself in former incarnations, is to make sure that the approach is in accordance with international law, and which means that the army is really instructed to minimize the losses to the population, to ask them to leave if there are activities. And one of the complications of all of that is that the Hamas has been hiding its headquarters, its bases, its munition, and so on, in mosques, in hospitals, in schools, which are supposed to be immune. But if you cheat and the immunity is abused, what do? What would the US do? I'm asking, what would Britain do? I'm mentioning in particular countries that respect and they have the rule of law. So that's as far as the situation. As far as the future, our government speaks of 3 goals. One is to do away with Hamas in terms of their governing the Gaza Strip. The other is getting back the kidnapped. And I think that now that we are in a rather kind of new stage in the warfare, I think the kidnaps question is kind of being upgraded. It becomes, and with the time, just thinking of the agony of these poor people there. So that's the other thing. And the third thing is rehabilitating or rebuilding Gaza under appropriate auspices. And in my view, if we could achieve, and I don't know if that, I'm not involved now in practical diplomacy or whatever, but if we could achieve that Gaza will run, at least for a long number of years, by in some kind of a multinational coalition or group to include like Egypt, Jordan, the US, others, so as to make sure that this is not re-emerging as a base of terrorism, which I don't think we can tolerate.
Is that even possible? Because already it seems that Egypt, Jordan, they're so reluctant to help even at this point, and the UAE, etc.
Well, they're reluctant to accept Gazans to Jordan and Egypt. I hope they will not be reluctant to help Gaza being rebuilt in Gaza and the people in Gaza, not in their countries, which is what they really are afraid of. That's at least the goal that I understand.
Right. We're recording this on Thursday, the 11th of January, and South Africa has taken Israel to the International Court in The Hague.
While we are talking here...
Yeah, I want you to weigh in on that, Judge.
The South African arguments are being heard this very hour.
Yeah.
In fact, I opened my cell to listen a little bit. This is a wrong process. This is a wrong place to deal with these questions. First of all, the argument is genocide. genocide, Israel never ever has an intent, which is a requirement of the Convention on Genocide, never ever has the intent to do away with the Palestinian people. So the notion of genocide here is totally unacceptable. In fact, the other way, the Hamas attack included the yelling to kill the Jews. I mean, which means if I could kill all the Jews, I'd kill all the Jews. This is not our goal. So, legally speaking, if the court will do its job objectively and properly from the legal point of view, they have to just say this is not the forum. There's no genocide here. The court, our problem with this court, from which we basically extracted ourselves in the 80s, because we were members of the court or accepted their jurisdiction, and they passed because of the apprehension, which also applies, by the way, to the other court in The Hague, the International Criminal Court, because our apprehension is the political nature of the appointment of judges and justices. For instance, take this court. It's elected by the UN, and it's a UN creation. And of course, the UN is not exactly the friendly atmosphere that Israel would like to have. So while I assume that those justices try to respect themselves, but there's no question that the inspiration for all of that comes from the UN, and we can go on and talk about that. But so we do have a problem in this with this court and with its dealing with our issues. And I'm glad that our government picked Aaron Barak to be the justice ad hoc in The Hague for the Israeli justice, because he is a Holocaust survivor, an internationally renowned lawyer and scholar, and a very experienced judge. So he's unique in that respect. And I'm glad he's still not only alive at 120, but he's also active at the age of 87 and is ready to assume this role, and I'm sure he'll do a good job.
Judge, just one more sort of area that I want to touch on with you, and then I want to get to your new role in the Society for Preservation of Israel Heritage Sites. You're the new president. Congratulations. The late Abba Eban, whom I'm sure you knew personally, said the Palestinians never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And I want you to weigh in on that comment. And what would you like to share with our listeners around the world about that? And as I always say, Judge, we have listeners in countries with which Israel doesn't even have diplomatic ties. So what would you want them to know about that?
First of all, Abba Eban was a great Israeli diplomat and statesman. And in fact, I don't know if you remember this, the British series, Yes Minister, Yes Prime Minister. And his nephew was the creator of that, Jonathan Lynn. And he once gave me the book of this series translated into Hebrew, and he inscribed it to me, to Eli Rubinstein, Sir Humphrey. Sir Humphrey is the civil servant who's running the show. I was then the cabinet secretary, and I was involved in many government activities. In any case, the Palestinians, he was right. The Palestinians have been missing opportunities. We could be in a different world today had they not missed the opportunity. I remember sitting with a Palestinian representative after the Madrid conference. I was in charge of our delegation in the Washington talks. And I was sitting with Dr. Abdul Shafi, who was from Gaza, by the way, a doctor, a very venerable person, an honest guy, and we had personal good relations. But he was rigid ideologically, and I said to him all the time, "You're being offered, you're not happy with our offers, take them. You later, if everything goes well, we'll renegotiate this or that point in terms of permanent status versus interim arrangement and so on. But do something. Don't just, complain or be kind of bitter that this is not enough, this is not enough. It may not be enough from your point of view. It may be enough from our point of view. Take it and start working. Start helping your people." What happened is the Gaza, and now we know much more than before. We evacuated in 2005 with a heavy price internally and so on. And it could be a paradise. It could be developed into a fantastic agricultural and industrial area and so on. Instead, it became kind of a base for terrorism and all of it, tunnels, all these schools and mosques and hospitals being used as terror bases. So, yes, the Palestinians didn't miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity.
Did you know Arafat well?
Not well. I met him. Frankly, I didn't want to go to meetings with Arafat. And I remember once being with King Hussein of Jordan and with Prime Minister Rabin. And we were sitting there and I told this joke, kind of. And Hussein said, "Do you tell Arafat those jokes?" And Rabin said, "He doesn't go to these meetings." I was only once with Arafat personally. This is at the Camp David of 2000, not the original Camp David of 78, which I am now, together with Barak, the two remnants of our delegation. But the Palestinian Camp David with Ehud Barak back in 2000, and Arafat was sitting next to me in a Friday night dinner, and I had to chat with him somehow, which I did, but that's the only time.
Why didn't you want to meet with him in the future after that?
I didn't believe he was sincere in his peace efforts. I didn't believe that he was about. I was heavily suspicious, and unfortunately, it's not, I hate I told you. I don't want to say I told you, but I was very suspicious of him. And unfortunately, it was an approach which was proven.
Just one more
correct.
Personality before we get on to your new role. Was Anwar Sadat as charming as people say he was?
Well, I attended a number of meetings with him, and the answer is yes, he was charming. I mean, Hussein was charming, King Hussein.
He was supposed to have been very personable, King Hussein.
King Hussein, since I used to come quite often to Jordan in the beginning with the wig and when it was clandestine, King Hussein, for me personally, was always very cordial and when I was appointed Attorney General, he called me at home. I was already out of all these. So it's true. I mean, you could argue on this or that policy, but personally, these two people were personable.
Right. I know Golda Meir developed a good relationship in the end with Sadat, didn't she?
Well, it was a short, a brief encounter in Jerusalem in his famous visit of,
Right.
which was for me, by the way. Like, I was at the airport. I wasn't supposed to be there, but my boss, Moshe Dayan, called me and said, "Would you like to join me to the airport?" I said, "Yes." And I went, and to be there was like the wings of history when you saw the airplane coming. But Golda did. I didn't know Golda. That's the generation before me. But she, throughout that visit, she met with Sadat. I don't think it was a long meeting, but anyhow, I'm not privy to everything.
Right, to what that was. All right, Judge, I could talk to you all day about all of this history, but I want to move on to your new role as president of the Society for Preservation of Israel Heritage Sites. And I first want to know, how do you get the call to become president?
Well, unfortunately, Shlomo Hillel, who was a great person in our history, passed away. He was in advanced age. He was in his late 90s, but very active. I knew him from my years as cabinet secretary when he was the speaker of the Knesset, and I had great respect for him. And after he passed away, the people in charge, so to speak, in the society approached me. I don't know what made them approach me. I didn't do much research. I considered it positively right away, and I met for a long day with the executive group of the society to find out what they were doing and so on. And I said yes, and I thought it will be just ceremonial and a little bit of work. I'm now only volunteering, so I have a number of voluntary activities. But in fact, it preoccupies my time more than I thought. But I agreed because it's important. What the society is doing is important. There's an old saying that a nation that doesn't respect its history has no future or no present. In the early years of the Jewish presence, or new Jewish presence that is beyond the old Jerusalem and other cities, Jews that were here forever, but the Zionist movement brought people who came here full of history, full of ideology based on history, and in a way it somewhat faded away in the younger generations. And what the society does is to preserve the memory, to preserve the sites that the society is is taking care of, advising on many other sites, and the notion of contributing to the continued Jewish history in this country, and also not only Jewish, but also other parts of the society, appeals to me. I'm very close from many years to Druze and others, and also Arabs, and we look at their history and see how that could be preserved. and there's some sensitivities, obviously. But so the answer is that it's important and it's challenging, and there are very good people running it. I like very much the leadership of the society. So I agreed to join. And nowadays, after October 7th, the society is trying on one hand side to help evacuees, which is what all of us should do, but also to prepare for the future when dust kind of is gone, and when things come back to normal. You want to make sure that the sites that have been the pillars of the Jewish presence in the Gaza area should be preserved. Per se, it should be preserved because of what happened on October 7th.
Yeah, if we can just drill down a little bit more on that, Judge, because really, how did the events affect the way that the society is operating right now? What are you doing differently? What's your main focus? I mean, you hinted at it, but if you can talk a little bit more about that.
Well, there's a lot of work around the evacuees, and the people are involved with them, involved in also in helping the farmers who have in great shortage of manpower, and on one hand side, and preparing for the future on the other hand. So the spectrum of activities is very impressive, very vital.
And to what extent is there volunteering going on with the heritage sites as a result of the October 7th attacks?
Well, first of all, the sites themselves, those that are in the vicinity, not only those that are permanently held by the society, but those in which the society is advising and helping. This is in itself a mission. And it could be in kibbutzim, it could be in moshavim, in villages throughout the area. And second, it's giving a hand, because it's a very veteran and serious voluntary association, giving a hand to the general effort, to the general Israeli effort nowadays, which you know about.
Right. The society has a very long working history with Jewish National Fund USA, Judge. Can you talk a little bit about the post-October 7th collaboration?
Well, I'm told, I haven't been personally involved, but I'm told that there's a great effort to collaborate, because JNF's mission conforms with the mission of the society, and the chair of the American JNF is very much involved, I'm told, with the society. He has drawn a plan.
You're talking about Russell Robinson.
Mr. Robinson.
Right.
Russell Robinson. He
has his Build Together. It's called Build Together, his master plan. Yeah.
Which is, of course, connected with the future of the Gaza and other areas. In the north, we shouldn't forget the north.
Of course.
For me, it's traumatic when I travel to those places and see the homes being abandoned, and I have a daughter on the Golan Heights. Thank God they're not evacuated, but there is all the time a threat from Syria, and they hear it, and they are much into it. My daughter and her family in a moshav on the Golan Heights.
How do you see October 7th, Judge, being memorialized and remembered so that future generations will know what happened? What would that look like, do you think, in your mind?
First of all, it will be a milestone in our history, no question. It is already a milestone. Everybody will know the term October 7. Thank God, I don't think they will call it the Simchat Torah War, but they will call it, in my view, they should call it the very simple name, the October 7 War. And it will be remembered as a trauma. We're not yet finished with that. As long as the kidnapped are not here, as long as the war rages in Gaza, but and I hope it doesn't erupt in the north. But it will be enshrined in our national memory, and unfortunately also the memory of all the civilians and soldiers killed and maimed, but over 500 soldiers, over 1,000 civilians, of course, and so on. It's a terrible thing. Specifically, I would think personally, of course, this was not yet finalized in any way. That's not the time, but I think there should be a museum in the Gaza area, in the one of the kibbutzim or moshavim, to commemorate what it looked like before the rehabilitation that may take place now.
And I want to go back, Judge, to something that you hinted at just a moment ago about the notion of the past and memorializing places, because there was a quote from former Palmach commander Yigal Alon who said, quote, "If a nation doesn't know its past, its present is uncertain and its future is unclear." So a bit of a two-part question. Before October 7th, how well do you think Israelis really understood their past? I mean, I'm an American, so I certainly can't speak to that. And after October 7th, do you think that there's going to be a renewed interest in really learning about the past?
Well, the answer is that many Israelis know, but not good enough. I teach in the Hebrew University. I lecture a lot, and many of the chapters of history are either not well known or not known at all sometimes by younger people. I can understand that somebody who is building his life, army, school, and so on, is not so much into history, but in my view, it should be, and nowadays, even high school, without offense to anybody, the people are interested in computers and in so on, and less in history and in humanities, but so in the universities too. But it's a must. Yigal Alon was right. By the way, I knew him, not very well, but I knew him. He was right in this phrase that and it's a must which we have to and the society has a role to play in that, a major role, because when if you take them, those sites directly run by the society, it's and of course many other sites which the society advises on developing. When let's say you come to the Kinneret Yard, Chatzar Kinneret, which is in near Kvutzat Kinneret, Moshava Kinneret, that is the beginning, basically, of the kibbutz movement in that Chatzar, that yard, and a small group of people came with an idea, an idealistic idea, and they fulfilled it. And you have the very significant kibbutz movement in its role in our history. People, you go to Machon Ayalon, which is the Ayalon was the clandestine weapon industry.
The bullet factory. It was the bullet factory.
Bullet and other, and it was clandestine. Shlomo Hillel was involved in that in real time, and this is under the nose of the British. A magnificent job was done, and and this is in a period where it was in the outskirts of Rehovot, a small town at the time, not the big city that it's now, and with Arab villages and so on around. And they did that despite the apprehension that the British will discover it, and then people would go to jail for long periods of time, or even worse than that. So I think we ought to distill, we ought to enlarge the history learning and the notion of history as part of your DNA, because memory is the genetic code of the Jewish people. We say it in a Kiddush every Friday night, Zecher L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. We remember Exodus from Egypt. We remember Rosh Hashanah is called Yom HaZikaron, the Day of Remembrance. So memory is so well entrenched in our collective DNA, and the society is fulfilling its role in this chain of history.
Can you connect history with our heroes and also make this connection that if young people learn history, it gives them a great sense of pride, and it also gives them a great sense of ruach, right, to go forward?
Yes.
Because, if they knew the stories of people from the past, that it was a real, Israel, as you growing up in the generation before, it was not easy living here. And so if they knew those stories and they saw the places, it just gives them even more energy to move forward in their lives, not only for themselves, but also for the country.
Yeah, I know from my grandchildren that whenever they come, and they come often, they look at memorabilia that we have, at the pictures, at all kinds of artifacts, and they ask me questions, and they are very interested in their roots, and our daughters, who are our daughters and their husbands are the parents. They also are very intensely aware of history, and I think that this is one of our goals is to pass the torch, so to speak, from generation to generation. That's why personally I agree always when I'm asked here in the court or elsewhere to speak to young groups, young people, to high school people, to army soldiers, to students.
Right. Judge, I'm certainly not going to ask you what's your favorite heritage site out of all of the society heritage sites, but if you were to tell a visitor who's come to Israel for the first or the millionth time, you can't leave Israel without visiting. What either one site or a couple of sites, Judge?
I would say one of the highly recommended places is the detention camp in Atlit, because it shows both the efforts of Jews to reach this country despite the British regulations, white paper, all kinds of decisions that were aimed to curb and to minimize Jewish immigration. And in fact, my own aunt came, and uncle came on illegal immigration, and they weren't an athlete, but they were. My late aunt used to always tell how she was carried by kibbutznik from the ship to the beach because the ship was a bit remote, and so what's known as ha'apala, the immigration, which was illegal, quote unquote, in those days. And by the way, one of the first laws of the state of Israel was to legalize the illegal. And of all these people that came this way, an athlete demonstrates it, and vividly. And now there's also the airplane there that was it goes with the story of Shlomo Hillel bringing Iraqi Jews because the Hapala was mainly Eastern European Jews, but Iraqi Jews in a clandestine way, very impressive story. So I would recommend that as a kind of to taste the history. But there are other possibilities too. We mentioned already two of them.
The Bullet Factory and so on.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at the number? I mean, I shouldn't say are you surprised at the number of heritage sites here, but Israel, I think for a visitor, may be surprised at the number of heritage sites here. I mean, Israel is both an ancient land and a modern land, but there are so many that you could go from site to site to site and just spend Lord knows how many. There's over 200 sites, aren't there?
Well, first of all, you're right, and we speak of sites from the modern period. That's
right.
what the society is doing, because we have the Antiquities Authority does ancient sites, but when we talk about the modern period, the rebuilding or rejuvenating or renewing
the rebirth,
the rebirth of Israel, it's you have a vast menu, so to speak, of places that you can visit. And I should add one more element. The society is involved in the cities, in local sites being marked by signs, by which wasn't done in the past, but now is done rather extensively. And for instance, recently I was involved personally with another person, a former librarian of this court, Seruda, to commemorate a composer and a poet who was killed in Gush Etzion in 1948, Tzvi Ben Yosef. And he wrote a number of songs that were popular in not only in his day, like Yesh Li Kineret Ben Arim Alpayim and many others. And he was killed. He was lonely here, and we convinced the municipality to have a kind of a memorial square named after him, and because of the war, the inauguration was postponed. But and of course the sign carries the name of the society, because they are involved in all these sites.
Right. I think it's just spectacular because, again, there's over 200 sites throughout the country. And while Israel, again, is an ancient country, it's also a new country. And it's beautiful how you're preserving the new sites for the future generations.
Yeah, you're right. And I I think that this is, I had big words, but it's like a sacred mission in a way, because if not this effort, but for this effort, you would things would be forgotten. It's like a living archive of the Jewish presence here, a living archive. I say Jewish because that's the main thing, but we have also other sites. Like I visited the Cherkessian village that is involved in preservation and more.
Right. Well, listen, Judge, before we wrap, because I know you've got a hectic schedule, I purposely did not ask you about judicial reform and the protests on both sides and so on. I don't get involved in politics on this show. Those are for other Exactly. Those are for other podcasts. So I just wanted to say that in case people tuned in and were wondering why I wasn't asking you about that. But you retired at age 70. As I understand it, in 2017.
That's the law.
That's the law. So you retired then. First question is, before we wrap, do you miss being a judge? And the second question is, do you ever sort of read the paper, watch the news, or listen to the news, and a case is decided, and you say to yourself, I would have decided differently? As I like to say, do you ever sort of shout at the television when a case comes up and you might not agree with the results?
Well, first, it was very interesting. This position, being Attorney General, was interesting. Being Cabinet Secretary was interesting. Being a peace negotiator was interesting. But the court is an exciting place to work. But I have a rule that I don't look back. I look forward. So that's one thing. The other thing is, yes, there are cases in which I would like to participate, because of their contents, but I never shout at television. I respect the court, and to be frank, usually I agree with the decisions, but no shouting.
Okay, I like that. Maybe it's just an American thing where we shout at the television.
Well, okay. So.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it right there. Judge, this has been such a fascinating conversation and a wonderful stroll through history. And I hope that this is one of many conversations that we can have with you here on IsraelCast. Thank you once again so much for inviting us into your office and for being so generous with your time. We want to thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. And we'll have info about the judge on the show notes page of our website, jnf.org/IsraelCast. And of course, we do release new episodes of the show every other Wednesday. I might even be releasing shows beyond that, given the fact that I'm in Israel right now. But nevertheless, we want to invite you so that you don't miss any episode. We want to invite you to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. Simply search for IsraelCast. And don't forget to rate and review us, because that really helps with our rankings, which in turn make it easier for more people around the world to find us. Or you can always enjoy the show by visiting us at our website. Once again, it's jnf.org/IsraelCast. And as I say, it takes a whole moshav to put IsraelCast together. For that, we thank Vivian Grossman, Dara Shapiro, J.D. Krebs, and Eli Kadrin. Our editors are Jay Rothman and James Casada from Miratone Studios in the very heart of New York City. And the music that you hear at the top and tail of the program is titled My Eden. It's by the very talented Rafi Malkiel from his album Water on the Tzaddik label. IsraelCast is powered by Jewish National Fund USA, your voice in Israel. For more info about JNF USA, do visit jnf.org. And if you'd like to write to us with story ideas or just to say hello, I'm sure the judge would love to hear from you, and so would I. So email us at IsraelCast@jnf.org. Meantime, I'm Stephen Shalowitz from Jerusalem. Thank you for tuning in and looking forward to having you join us on future episodes of IsraelCast.